Good afternoon, investors. Today I want to take some time to address some of the questions that I commonly get on refurbishment costs. I know this is a topic that is important to all of you, and since I deal with this week in and week out, it seemed like this might be a good way to look at some of these questions. The first question is, when you get bills, why do we not bill the tenants? Well, we do, always. And we will keep their deposits without hesitation to cover any of your costs that are above normal wear and tear. The problem is that we have some tenants that are savvy, shall we say, and to avoid us keeping their deposit, they simply don't pay their last month's rent. When that happens, we don't have time to evict them before their lease is up. And so they effectively force us to use their deposit to pay their last month's rent, which leaves nothing left for deposit. This is something that frustrates us no end, but there's really no way around it, except we take 2 months deposit, but then they don't pay the last 2 months rent. And it still doesn't give us the time that we need to evict them. And not only that, it just doesn't make financial sense to evict them, because an eviction will often cost more than the lost month's rent. So that, I hope, helps answer the question of why sometimes you're getting costs even though that we have a deposit. And that's it's frustrating, I know. So let's talk now about some of these costs that before you when this happens, or when the costs exceed the deposit that we have. Typically the most important costs are paint and carpet. And let me explain to you what a tenant's expectations are, because I know a lot of you think that paint and carpet should last X amount of time. And it does in your homes when you're using quality product and when you're looking after it as a homeowner. But tenants, as you can imagine, screened or otherwise, just don't treat things the way that they should. And so what apartment communities do is they just use the cheapest carpet they can find, they use the cheapest paint they can find, and they recarpet and repaint after every tenant. They just accept that as a cost of doing business. We do too, because we understand how that works, but we get a lot of pushback from owners that don't understand that and think that it should last longer. Well, it can last longer, but when you're using carpet that costs $1 a foot, it doesn't. It just doesn't. This is carpet where you can peel back the pile and see the matting directly through the carpet. And you tread it down, and it treads down in a matter of months. It's completely flat. But it looks great when tenants move in, and tenants always ask, are you going to recarpet? Are you going to repaint? This is what tenants expect when they come in and they see a place that looks secondhand. And so this is why apartment communities do it. They also do it because they have to. As I've said, it's cheap. And this flat paint that they use, while it's very cheap, it scuffs, and you can't get the scuffs off, so they have to repaint. But they do enjoy those economies of scale that we don't, and they have guys on golf carts that run around doing maintenance that are on salary, and it's just a very different experience in an apartment community than it is for us managing a lot of different units for different owners all over the world. The tenants, of course, don't know the difference. For them, it's an apartment, whether it's privately owned or whether the clubhouse owns all of them. They don't know the difference, but they have the same expectations. And we have to try and meet those expectations on their behalf without spending a penny more than we have to on your behalf to get the job done. So here's what we're up against. We either, repaint in this cheap flat paint every time and achieve a bright, welcoming look for everybody, or we try to make the paint last longer. And if we do that, which I'm not opposed to at all, we need to switch to a more expensive satin or eggshell finish, which can be wiped down in between tenancies. And so unless they've done really awful things to it, we can normally get at least another year or two out of the paint. So let's stick with paint for a moment. The other option with paint, which is the first option, is flat versus eggshell or satin, is whether we spray everything the same color or whether we do what most of you do in your homes, which is to go for a dual color where the trim, the baseboards, the ceiling, windowsills and doors are painted in a semi-gloss, which is a different color to the walls. So this looks much nicer, it rents much faster, and it lasts much longer. But guess what? It costs double to do, because we're talking about a semi-gloss paint on all of the trim, which has to be done by hand with a brush, and then the walls have to be sprayed in a different color with that eggshell. And so it costs twice as much. And because we get pushback if we do that, we generally stick to the cheap flat paint. But as you're now probably understanding, we're going around in a big circle here. If we use the cheap flat paint, we're going to have to keep doing it because it just scuffs. There's just nothing we can do about it. The painters love it because they have permanent employment using a paint that they know is awful, frankly, but it looks great when you're showing it. It looks great until people move in and start touching the walls. So this is the line that we walk for you, to try and do in each of your cases what we think is the best. Because don't forget, you may not have thought of this, but you're all over the world and all of your units are different. Some are like this, and so we try to keep them like this. Some of you have upgrades, others of you don't. Some of you have hardwood floors, most of you have carpet. But in each case, we have to try and figure out what we need to do. Let me just say now something about floor and the carpet. The carpet we use is the cheapest apartment grade carpet we can find. But tile is a better way to go if you intend to keep the unit long term, because you only have to do it once and it never has to be replaced. Whereas carpet, we can sometimes get a couple of years out of it, sometimes 3 or 4, but often only 1 if it's messed up. We have people that have pets, and as you probably know, pets do horrible things to carpets, and we take pet deposits again, but it's not sufficient to cover the damage that's done in many cases. So there are a couple of things there for you to think about. As I say, please understand that we always do the best that we can in each case. We will, I think, be switching over to a satin paint for everyone, which will probably be the same color, so that we can start to enjoy those economies of scale and try and get more life out of the paint. But that does mean that your first bill might be a little more expensive, because if you have a white, let's say, for example, we're switching to a white, and this is what you have, it's going to take 2 coats at least to put that to a white. Now, in most cases, we'll be doing the opposite. We'd like to go with something like this, but it is more expensive in the first instance to switch a unit from all white or a peach or some of the colors that we have to a color like this, and then keep it the same. So if you have a particular preference, let us know. I know for most of you, your properties are pure investments. You're never going to live in them, and you really are not too bothered, how it's done, provided it doesn't cost too much money and it brings in the rent. So that's what we do. So that's it for now. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call anytime or email me. You know where to find me. Thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking to all of you again on an individual basis in the coming months.